I'm sorry for the lack of props for my props. We are going to study about sleep today, and we're going to learn some fascinating things. It's really important for us to understand why God caused us to sleep, and the benefits of it, so that we can have the best outcome for our lives here. And as we consider how it is that God communicates with us, it is through the very delicate neurons of our brain. And we've gotten this information that I'm presenting today from Dr. Milton Teskey, and I would strongly suggest you looking him up online and following some of his research. It's very, very fascinating. So when the Lord created man, sleep was something that happened on Adam's first day, wasn't it? Yes, and as we get older, we might begin to tease our grandchildren about, when you're all grown up, when you look forward to bedtime. Yes, and so there's a lot of things that happen while we sleep. A lot of us think we rest. Did you know that the brain is actually at least 30% more active while we're sleeping than it is while we're awake? That's amazing, isn't it? But there are certain things that are necessary for our functioning optimally that happen during sleep that are very, very important. And we're going to talk about our brains and how they take care of us while we're sleeping. I'm going to get my little pin here. As we all know, that's good, thank you. There are different stages to sleep. I was very a little bit perplexed when they called them stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, and yet not understanding how in order, actually over here, stage 4 is in the beginning of sleep, and stage 3, okay, this is stage 4 on this level, and stage 3, and you can see these two happen within the first 3 hours of sleep between 9 p.m. and midnight. This is going to be significant as we move on in our study today. We want to remember this 90-minute cycles, like you can see 90 minutes here and about 90 minutes here, but the most important part for stage 3 and 4 is in the first part of the night, okay? We're going to consider our lives, and as we live our life, things happen to us every day. We learn things, we need to remember things, we do things, we're creating habits or perhaps trying to break habits. We are doing sometimes things that aren't important and other times things that are very important. And what happens is all of that goes on our brain's desktop. And we're going to call that the desktop. It's the hippocampus. It's all stored there every day. And then, as evening sets on, there's a chemical that raises in our bloodstream called adenosine. And it is a molecule that looks like this. And it fits onto the receptors in our brain. And this is the chemical that triggers tiredness and sleepiness. And once we have this in place, then our body wants to go to bed. And after we go to bed, then our body will release melatonin. And then that melatonin is broken down and used to create many, many other chemicals that are necessary for healthy brain function. So this is very key. And on here you can see I say adenosine is the key to sleep. Without it, we don't feel sleepy or tired. So as the adenosine moves in and we go to sleep, we pull down the shades of our office. We lock the door. We don't go to sleep. We go to work. We start working on that desktop and we begin sorting things out. First of all, one thing we want to do is decide what things are worth keeping and what things need to go into the trash. The things that are worth keeping, the body stores, the brain stores them in the long-term memory. And they've actually been able to watch this with some of their scientific modalities. How they do this, I don't know, but they can actually see particles of information or particles going from the hippocampus into the frontal lobe being stored for later. Isn't that fascinating? And others get taken out in the trash, okay? Things we don't need, such as, I know you know all about my yellow car and how I love it because when I come out from the store, I can find myself and get into it. But I needed to know where I parked my car yesterday when I was shopping, but I don't need to know that today because I'm not there anymore. So my brain needed to get rid of that information and take that thing off of my desktop because I was going to need room on my desktop for today and all the things that I have to accomplish today. And there is another thing that happens while we sleep. During the day, we may have unprocessed proteins in our brain that are damaging to it. And if they build up over long term, they have determined that these proteins that are not broken down contribute to Alzheimer's and dementia. So, how does the body take care of that? Well, when we go to sleep, in the beginning stages of the night, there are certain brain cells called glia. They used to think they had no function. Oh, but they discovered differently. The glia cells actually shrink by 60%, and when they shrink, it allows a flood of clear, pure water to fill the brain and to begin washing it. And then as the night goes on, those cells puff back up again and push all the toxins out of the brain so that we can start the day with a clearer mind, able to think more readily without those toxins remaining in the brain. Isn't that exciting? Who knew? And so, as that goes on, we move into the stages of sleep. I don't know if you can see my red line. Okay, right here at this beginning point, that's wakefulness. And then we went to sleep, and right away we went way down into level stage 4. And then we came up to stage 1, and this little red line at the top, that's a dream. Down again into stage 4. Up, a little bit of dream. Oops, had to go to the bathroom. And okay, down into stage 1, 2, and oops, go up again, wake again, and then dream, dream, dream. Okay? You can see how that works out, the different stages. And if something were to happen that you didn't go to bed, you're going to miss out on this long-term storage stuff. Uh-oh. What if you're trying to learn something new? It's going to be harder, isn't it, if you're not able to move the stuff from the day's practices or studying into long-term storage. That's going to be very interesting now, isn't it? It's going to be harder for you to learn that musical piece that you've been trying to learn, okay, or pass your science test or whatever. And so as we think about the importance of keeping on the schedule that the Lord designed for our bodies, we're going to move on to the understanding more of what's happening besides just the first 2 stages. Stages 1 and 2 are also very, very important. The brain waves slow down and flood over the brain from front to back, and it's a cycle. And as we move into the stages 2 and 3, we begin to have the ability to be creative. We begin to have the ability to connect things that we learned previously. How many of you have been reading the Bible for a long time? I like years. And then you're reading again, and then you go, oh, that name, they said that name back here in this book. And you start to connect the dots and how these different situations in the Bible and different instances are mentioned in more than one book of the Bible, and you put them all together into this beautiful tapestry. That happens in stages 1 and 2 when we get plenty of stages 1 and 2 sleep in the rest of the night. So we need that. And especially if we're going to be creative and for it helpful not just ourselves but society. And so when we clean off our desktop every night, we free up that short-term storage for the next day's tasks when we're trying to learn something new, etc. And I can say that I have had to drop it recently, but I started trying to practice piano, and every day, and I knew this, and going to bed on time and making sure I'm trying to do all my health implements that I use, I was better every day. And it would just tickle me to death. I'd have to giggle that I could see my improvement day by day as I practice my scale. But one day, hopefully, with the Lord's blessing, I'll get past the scales. So as we have those situations going on, we get a better understanding of how important sleep is. And now I want to introduce to you another aspect of sleep. And that is when we put caffeine on board. Okay? Now, when we looked at our adenosine molecule, this portion at the top, this is what connects onto the neurotransmitter in the brain and unlocks the brain, the door of the brain that allows us to step into the sleep mode. But this is my rendition of a caffeine molecule. And you'll see that it is different, but the top part is shaped the same. So this can go into the slot on the neurotransmitter in the place of the adenosine. Okay? Actually, it has the capability of kicking the adenosine off of the transmitter and putting itself in the place. And so caffeine has a half-life of 7 hours. So that means that after 14 hours, there is still 25% of that caffeine active in your system. So and it continues on like that, and it takes a while for all of that caffeine to get out of your system. So after you have had your Pepsi in the afternoon because you're groggy at work and you felt like you needed a perk, 2 nights of sleep are going to be interrupted to some degree by that one caffeine drink. And you need to know that. So now I am going to unveil what happens. This is called sleep architecture. My little diagram there. And this is the sleep architecture of the brain with caffeine on board. So down here is stage 4. There was absolutely no activity in stage 4. Uh-oh. So let's review again. Stages 3 and 4. What do we do there? We sort accumulated information, moving valuable information from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. We remove the metabolic waste that damages our synapses and protects us from Alzheimer's disease. And in stages 3 and 4, when we get plenty of that, it greatly enhances our learning and creating new habits. Okay? So, if you don't have part of that going on, and you can see these are really long in stage 3 as well, you just have this little tiny, this person's going to have a lot harder time learning, are they not? Because they can't move very much information from their short-term into their long-term memory. So all that studying they did was almost for nothing. Oh my, that's scary. And then, oh my, this is is look at all these wakefulnesses. You might not even remember them when you have caffeine on board, but you're sleeping at a very shallow level. And that is not, when you wake up feeling tighter than when you went to bed, maybe this is why. Okay? And then there's some dreaming. There is some dreaming, but you can see very little dreaming. So let's look again at what happens in stages 1 and 2. The removal of information that was not transferred to the long-term memory. So if you have trouble dwelling on something petty and it just will not leave your mind, and you really want to get rid of it, perhaps you're having trouble with your sleep patterns that are not enabling your body to get rid of stuff you really don't want to hold on to anymore. That's sobering, is it not? You want to start the day with an uncluttered mind. So you want to have plenty of stages 1 and 2. And then in the dreaming portion, the little red parts, see up here we have quite a significant amount of red parts, and here there's just a little bit. That is when brain works on its thought organization and its creativity. And the gentleman, the scientist who came up with our periodic table for our elements, he worked months and months and months on trying to figure this out. And one night he had a dream. And when he woke up from the dream, he wrote it all down with very few changes to that table. That is the same table that we now use in science. That's how powerful our brains can be. Does that give you goosebumps? That's exciting, is it not? And so I want to propose to you that it's very important to get our sleep, that it's equally important to get to sleep as early as we can, because this truly is the most optimum window for our body to get stages 3 and 4, and that we don't want to be ingesting things into our system that might cause a pattern something like this. Now, I also want to mention to you that chocolate is not guiltless, okay? It has a tendency to have a slower onset for the effectiveness. So you might eat the chocolate today and notice nothing tonight, but perhaps tomorrow night or the next night you might have trouble sleeping. And so it's more difficult for people to connect the chocolate to their sleep problems because, you know, it's not as close to the incident of using the chocolate. But we want to limit our chocolate intake. And if you're really serious, you might want to just not use it. And I have to say, we learned all of this beautiful information after we had developed the most superb chocolate smoothie recipe. Yes, we all have our challenges, and we really need to, make good choices. But I wanted to share this with all of us again. As you can see, this was used once before, but I really think that this information is not just important because of the caffeine issue, but there are other things in our life that we know interrupt our sleep, and if there's something we can do about it, an easy choice, and we see the reasons why with our eyes, it gives us strength to move forward in a positive way and take better care of our brains. And again, the brain is where the Holy Spirit communicates with us. And because we want to hear his voice and do his will, we want to hear most accurately. And when we've had a very disturbed night, we're going to not have that sharpness. And so this might also be another reason why many people who study, whether they're studying for a college course or whether they're studying the Bible, find their best study time is going to be early in the morning when their desktop is clean, they have no residue from the toxins of the night before. And I hope this was a blessing to you. Thank you.